Do you want to know how to beautifully compose your artworks like these ones I made recently in Blender? Well, here are some great tips on how to do so. Firstly, make a worthwhile subject for the shot. This is one of the most key things. You want a nice looking model at the center of attention so that everybody can look at it and be like, wow, this guy knows how to make art. And very importantly, when somebody asks you, did you make that? You can actually say yes. So please, I encourage you to go out there and actually make that amazing hyper-detailed subject. Because not only will it look awesome and give you bragging rights, it will grow your abilities in 3D immensely if you consistently do this. Next, intelligently place everything in your scene. Don't create scenes like I used to and try and cram too many cool things into the same image. There should be a path for the audience's eyes to follow, and it should be very clear and not too confusing, otherwise people won't understand your artwork, and it just won't look aesthetic. As you can see in this art piece, I have the skull placed slightly off center according to the rule of thirds, but still very much in center frame. The mushrooms in the scene are just as big, if not larger than the skull. However, they all hover at the edge of the screen and are not in focus. Thus they almost frame the skull rather than drawing attention away from it. There's heavy depth of field on the foreground so that your eyes don't get too locked into it, and the background is silhouetted. Overall, the skull is highly in focus, center frame, and your eye is drawn to it, if that makes any sense. I might just be rambling. Lastly, only do fine detail where it counts. This applies to both the 3D modeling process and also in compositing and post-processing. For instance, as I said before, the skull remains in focus using the depth of field on the virtual camera in Blender. This means a lot of the detail in foreground and background is lost because it's either out of focus or silhouetted. This is fine because implied detail is there because the models that are out of focus are still decent. However, the main effort has gone into the model which is in focus and in the primary center of attention. That skull is very high level of detail and a lot of effort went into making it compared to everything else, and in this case I'd say that that was a pretty worthwhile payoff. In the compositing process, I color graded the skull to bring out more mossy tones and accentuate the fungi around the skull. Alongside this, dust particles were added as a camera screen effect to add more atmosphere to the foreground, and a nice red gradient was placed over the horizon to make the sky a little bit more interesting and less flat. Everything just continuing to frame the skull and make this a more atmospheric picture. Unfortunately, however, this picture is lacking a bit of story. I've told you my method of composing a great picture, but I haven't told you how to create a good story out of it. This artwork sort of gives off some vibes, feelings, emotions, good atmosphere, but there's no solid story behind it, and I think that's fine in general. But in this case, I think that it would have been better if I'd thought about something. So that's my final tip. Get inspiration, get a story. One way to do this is by following other great artists. For instance, you might consider checking out my Instagram where I post all of my artworks. And I'm perfectly fine with you being inspired by any of those artworks and creating your own interpretations. Currently, I am competing in the Endless Engines Community Render Challenge, hosted by Clint Jones. This is a really fun art project, but it'll take a while before it's done, so stay tuned for cool update videos. I hope this video was useful to you. Please consider subscribing if you want to see more stuff like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye.